Early on, we decided on the dystopian genre of film. This is because we were intrigued by the specific genre and the conventions, and furthermore, we were both really big fans of this genre, so this pushed us to do it. First, we had to decide on the storyline for our feature film. We brainstormed ideas of elements that we actually wanted to include in our film, for example, aliens, evacuation, disease, natural disasters, etc., which were very conventional dystopian storylines. And we finally decided to follow the storyline of a power cut and the city being evacuated with one person being left behind. After this, we began researching different TV shows and films that shared the same genre and even the same storyline that we wanted to go with.
We took inspiration from several TV shows and films. For TV, we mainly focused on the show Revolution, which takes place 15 years after a global blackout. We took this show as our main inspiration as it had a lot of elements that we wanted to include, whether it be characters or just setting, prop design. In film, we looked at The Road and 28 Days Later, as they have similar character types that have to go through some kind of transformation, and also a similar plotline. Looking at these films, it led us to watching trailers and taking inspiration into the coursework that insinuate the isolation of the protagonist. For example, in The Walking Dead, we see a number of shots that have the main character wandering the empty highway. This is something we emulated in the scene where our main protagonist is shown wandering with her helper through an empty road. Regarding character types, we mainly looked at the character of Olivia from the TV show Fringe, as she goes through a transformation a lot like Ava's, not in the term of the plotline, but in the term of growing up, so to speak. Olivia goes through a lot of problems as a child and ends up being a very strong female lead in the TV show, which is very conventional of a dystopian film, as the hero goes through a transformation to become the stronger character.
After looking at these films and television shows, we began to fully plan our own trailer, which first meant looking for locations to use in filming. This took almost no time at all because we both knew a number of places that would look abandoned and or aren't used by the public anymore, so it would fit in with the dystopian genre, as the abandoned areas and isolation are a typical element. For example, the film we looked at for inspiration, The Road, included a lot of these types of locations. One of the most common locations in this film is in the middle of a forest, which we emulated at the beginning of our trailer, as it is where our protagonist awakes.
The postmodern elements we included in our trailer were mainly intertextuality and challenging meta-narratives. This is because our main protagonist is female, which goes against conventions, as the female is usually the helper or a minor character. In terms of intertextuality, we took elements from the TV show Revolution, as we emulated a lot of the locations, such as the abandoned forest/woods, and we also got our main inspiration from the plot from this TV show.
We then began to film, taking our research into consideration, and started our establishing shots to open the trailer. With me being our main character, we wanted to have a postmodern beginning, where I'm introduced to a dystopian society alone. We portrayed these shots with wide shots that include both me and the location around me, now empty and deserted, to show my isolation. Afterwards, we introduced my helper, the hopeless and abandoned dog that also seeks help, similar to the film I Am Legend, where the anti-hero character has a dog as his companion. This characterization is conventional because it shows the broken society through the characters.
In terms of props, we kept it simple by only having a handful of important objects that help drive the narrative forward. The map showing the sanctuary location being one of them. This enabled the main character Ava to start her journey towards safety. The idea of a goal for the protagonist to journey is very typical of the genre. For example, the mansion in 28 Days Later and the coast in The Road. Typically, we used desaturated and dark grades to show how bleak and gritty our locations were in the dystopian setting. The most common transition effect we used between our clips were crossfades that made them subtly overlap with each other, matching the slow tempo of the music at the beginning of the trailer. However, when the pace picks up, we stopped using crossfades between the clips to make the action sharper.
In terms of music and sound, we wanted to keep the ambient diegetic sound simple so we could emphasise the emptiness in the locations. So we only added a gentle ambient sound clips like hollow wind sound effects and the sound of light leaves being crunched. After we layered the initial sound effects, we moved on to using Filmstro to make the main piece of music. This software really helped emphasise the genre because it supplied us with a number of dystopian themed songs to work with. After picking one sample sound, we began tweaking the depth, power and momentum on top of our already constructed trailer to build the tension and anticipation towards the end.
For our research, we analysed dystopian trailers and found that they had titles that both introduced the narrative and promoted the film. An example would be in the trailer for 28 Days Later, where a series of indie titles come in introducing the process of the disease outbreak, updating each day like a diary, e.g. day 1. The titles we included were mainly used to set up the narrative in a conventional way. This included the repetition of the rhetorical, imagine a world, that would make the audience put themselves into that situation. The following titles help clarify the narrative, such as imagine a world where everyone you knew disappeared, and where everything is plunged into darkness. These clearly help set up the dystopian plot alongside the images being shown. Furthermore, we included indie titles with reviews from magazines such as Empire and Sight and Sound, which is conventional of many trailers, as it is a way of promoting it to an audience because it builds more of a hype from how good the reviews are. Our ancillary products help promote our film by using similar imagery from the film with a strong tagline to attract the audience. It already sets up the narrative as a dystopian film by following the same colour scheme that would be expected in a post-apocalyptic film, such as desaturated tones similar to those in the Road's promotional material.
For the poster, we wanted to create a very typical dystopian look, so we looked at inspiration from the previous films that we looked at for the storyline. Almost all of their posters included a singular figure on the front, and it was very desaturated and isolated. We mainly looked at the posters of The Walking Dead, The Road, Kin, and Dark Skies. For our own poster, I decided to make the image a silhouette because it is a very typical dystopian element for a trailer, as it makes the figure look more isolated in the vast background. When picking a background, we wanted to make it look gloomy, which is a conventional dystopian poster element, so we decided on the grey sky, as it looks very desaturated, which follows the look of our actual trailer.
The magazine cover follows magazine conventions with the use of colouring, image manipulation, and text positioning. After researching into the typical elements added to magazine covers, I follow the same layout instructions in terms of text positioning, the varied amount of fonts used, and also the image positioning. The conventions found on most Empire magazines are centered around how the image is being shown and how the text complements it. When constructing the cover, I manipulated the colouring in both our image, being our main characters, and the Empire masthead to give it a richer and darker look. After layering the main images, I began adding text to advertise After Dark, and also other well-known films that would entice an audience to read. The cover itself is mostly images, so it didn't look text-heavy or boring. The barcode itself is vital to the sales for the ancillary product.